Gather round, dads, it's time for a tale. Hand me a book and a warm pint of ale. Let's discuss writing and the literary gods with Dan Roberts on the Dad Lit Pod.
Welcome to the Dad Lit Pod, the literary podcast for those who know that Weekend at Bernie's is actually a metaphorical drama about stagnation in your 1920s or in your 20s. I bring this up because tonight I'm joined by Eric Miller. Eric Miller is a horror writer who has written screenplays which featured Christy Swanson, the original Buffy the Vampire Slayer, my Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and Terry Kaiser, Bernie Koufax from Weekend at Bernie's. He has a new book out called Whatever Happened to Uncle Ed. And I'm joined by my first produced screenplay writer, the first ever in the history of the Dad Lit Pod, who's been produced as a screenplay writer. And I'm very excited to talk to you, as you know, because I looked up all of your IMDb and
That took a while.
was so excited. And yeah, so Eric, tell me about yourself. How did you decide to become Mr. Hollywood? And then finally, what led you to write your new book?
Well, I was like many people, laying in my bed and bedroom in the Midwest. Grew up watching movies and bad TV and a lot of good TV, and good and bad, and fell into horror at an early age in both books and movies. Thanks to the great Sammy Terry, who was on, I think it was Channel 4 and out of Indianapolis on Saturday night, the great horror movie host who took all the movies seriously, even if they were crappy.
Oh yeah, and
But yeah,
he's the model for Danny DeVito's character in Jack the Bear.
yeah, and he's a legend. I can't remember the name of
Mm.
the book, but I have a horror movie host book around here somewhere, and they're all fun. They're all different. Everything from the survivors, Svengoolie, and people are some of the last ones. And there were some terrific ones through the years. But the one thing that everyone singled out why Sammy Terry was the OG, because he took the movie seriously. He took it. It
Mm.
wasn't a joke to him. And again, I love the joking stuff. I love Svengoolie. It's hilarious. That kind of horror host is terrific. Elvira and all those, and all the progeny out there over the years. But Sammy Terry took it seriously. And even though he had his little rubber spider, George, I think it was his name, but it was like George was his friend. And, when you're a kid, you relate to that. So grew up in that and just watching movie posters on my walls and just dreaming of Hollywood. And then one day I just kind of said, well, hell, I could do that. And was to change my major in college. I think it was like the third or fourth major I changed, and kind of helped co-create a little film major that had been a little bit dormant where I was at the time, and basically graduated, grabbed an internship a little bit late, and wound up in Hollywood as a long-haired kid from Indiana. And still, too many decades later to count, I'm still plugging away, both as a writer, like you said, as a screenwriter, lucky enough to have been produced, I think 6 or 7 times, and a bunch of other times that I do rewrites and little punch ups here and there that I don't put my name on for various reasons. But, and then also working behind the scenes. I've been working crew, and with its, all of its fun and stress and all the fun things that go into the behind the scenes stuff, which, most people know a lot about these days, thanks to the internet and a lot of TV shows and DVD backspace. But so I've kind of been on both sides of the line. We call it above the line and below the line, and been a producer on indie films and production manager. And these days I do transportation quite a bit. And then I still write. And then on the other side, I was always staying busy. I started with short stories when I was a kid, got better and better and better. And that probably took about, 40 years too long to get my first novel out. Probably should have done it back in the 80s. But when I was still young and had a lot more energy. and didn't know what I was doing wrong. But I finally got it out. And as I like to say, I think being the Dad Lit podcast, I think a lot of dads of every age and anyone of any age can relate to. It's better late than never. Just follow your dream. It doesn't matter how old you are or how young you are. Just you do it. Doesn't matter if you take forever to get around to it. Just do it. What the heck?
Yeah,
But do
so
it while you
let's
still have enough energy to get it done.
yes. Let's talk about that. Because this comes up a lot, and I have friends who stayed home. And I followed my dream. I wanted to be a professional historian, and I've made that happen. Um, what what's the ultimate thing that convinced you to go out and to be part of show business? Because ultimately they're the great sort of jokes about, and leave show business. Uh, I, from where I sit, it's so romantic and it's such a romantic concept. You know what I mean? And all of it, any aspect of it, from, the PAs, to craft services, to everyone involved. And of course, show business has become so ubiquitous in LA's own study of itself, from films and television shows. I mean, all of the top television shows now are just about Hollywood analyzing itself.
Yeah,
Uh,
there's definitely a lot of that, and some great examples of that, and some not so great because
yeah.
sometimes I don't think we're as interesting as we think we are. But as I've said before, though, and this is not an arrogant thing at all. I don't want to be confused with that because I'm actually very humble and very appreciative of my part of being a very small cog in a big machine, no matter what happens. But when everybody talks shop, you go to the bar, you talk about what happened at the brake shop, or as you're a truck
Mm.
driver, you're this, that, and the other. The whole world talks about our shop. Not
Oh
everybody
yeah.
likes us. No, but not everybody likes us. But just like me as a kid, reading Fangoria, reading Starlog, reading the behind the scenes of how movies are made, there was just something in there that's fascinating. And for some reason, I think many people in the world, not as many people are as excited about how a cement truck runs. Shout out to my friend who runs a cement truck. It's kind of fun and interesting to me, but people don't want to talk about that at the bar. They want to talk about, movies, this, that, and the other. And of course, a lot of it's celebrity focused, which I try to stay as far away from the celebrity stuff as I can, even though I've worked with a lot of big people. It's they're over there, I'm over here. And yes, I've had some extremely positive interactions with many names, but at the same time, we're all just people doing a job. And that's another big misconception about Hollywood, is that even the actors, even the big name actors, they're people with hopes and dreams and fears just like anybody else. And yeah, some of them get paid a hell of a lot better, and they get assistance and drivers and nice trailers and private facilities that the rest of us don't get. So, and hey, but you know what? The path to that, most of them earned that. And it's not an easy road. And so, again, not a lot of celebrities aren't popular. Some people, too many people love them. Some people hate them, but whatever. Just everybody remember that them, the crew, all of us, even the people that work in the movie theater, it comes down to, like you said, the PAs, the craft service. Everybody has a job to do. And somebody just like me got in the car one day and said, "Hey, I want to go do that." I don't know what, there's so many different stories about how people fell into it. Some people, it's just a job. Some people like me, it's a passion. And to answer your question, was just a dream. I've been a storyteller, and my dad was a storyteller, and I come from a line of storytellers, and it's kind of a very Midwestern thing to tell stories. But somehow I just felt like I wanted to tell bigger stories to more people if I could, and I always wanted to, through my writing, through whatever I do, I just hoped to inspire or touch or scare or whatever it takes people, just like other writers and filmmakers have done to me. I just kind of wanted to be part of that. So, and never wanted to be in front of the camera, didn't want to be a director, didn't want to be that. I'm perfectly happy being behind the scenes and kind of sinister in the shadows and pulling strings here and there when I can. So I'm much more comfortable doing that. But any long rambling answer, I hope I answered your question there a little bit and maybe gave some illumination to how Hollywood actually works. And publishing is the same way. Millions, probably literally millions of people out there writing a book, writing a story to various degrees. Some never finish it, some do, and you just do it because you have whatever that internal drive is to tell a story in whatever format it is. Might be an Instagram story, might be a novel that gets put up on Amazon, or it could be a screenplay that you're trying to get made. Whatever it is, people want to tell stories, and I love that, and I encourage that. And whether you become a big shot in Hollywood and live in a mansion, or you're a medium level, low level person like me that gets by and has had some successes that you're very proud of, or if you don't ever get that big success, you still do it for you. You still tell that story, and whether it's your friends around the bar or whatever, just do it and because it's you. If it makes you happy, I read some of my stories and throw those, oh, that's crap. How did I write that? But other ones I just read and I giggle or I get scared as I'm reading through them, and I still love them, even if most people will never see them. But like, yep, I did that for me and it makes me happy. So,
Yeah, I think I've thought about this a lot because I'm going to be honest. I always thought that the people who went out to LA to become actors and actresses were out of their goddamn mind. And
a little bit.
yeah, and I was listening to an interview with an actor who told his father that he basically said to his father, who was also an actor, and I forget who this was, um, but it was recently in a documentary, and he said to his father, you know, I might want to do a little acting on the side. And his father said to him, he said, there's no such thing as acting on the side because anyone who wants to do that will do anything to make it happen. It just doesn't exist in that way. And as an aspiring novelist and a person who wants to sell novels, I became sort of acutely aware of the fact that there are always going to be people in super hyper competitive industries where quality and, making it happen comes down to committing your whole self to making that role happen. And I had a sort of renewed appreciation for just how much goes into the people who go out and take the risks and do that in Hollywood. And I think Obsession recently was a great example of that, of this idea of just a person who takes a personal risk, who puts the money down, puts themselves on the line, and and who just extends that creative energy and that creative commitment, and how much work that goes into that and how spectacular the result can
Yeah.
be.
Yeah. And again, hats off to all the people that do it of any level of success, and even the people who wash out or fail. And by the way, I don't think failure is not a bad word. Too many people say failure is bad. As I've coached so many people over the years, come to Hollywood, get in the film industry. If you don't like it, if you don't get in, if you don't make it, you can go back home. It's failure is like when you're a kid, you fall down, you get up, you learn how to walk. Eventually you stick forks into the outlet. Don't stick forks into the outlet. Bad idea. Not advocating,
Yes.
but you learn that hurts, and you touch fire when
Hollywood
you're,
screenwriter Eric Miller
yeah,
says, stick a fork into the outlet and learn that lesson.
as long as the power is off. But we as humans do things and we try, and you get better every time. So that's why failure, again, that was a side note there. But come out here. If you don't like it, try it. If you have a dream, follow your dream. And it doesn't matter if you want to be a plumber, if you want to be a truck driver, if you want to be in Hollywood, whatever, try it. And
Mhm.
it doesn't work out for everybody. But I think you're right. There's a certain bit of mania and obsession. And hopefully it's on for the right reason, that some people as actors, as writers, as directors, that they want to tell stories that, again, there's always the motivation of money. Of course, we all want to be rich and swimming pools, movie stars, and live next to the Clampetts in Beverly Hills. But most people that I've met in this industry, and writing too as well, novels, screenplays, Hollywood behind the scenes, that they just want to tell stories. And
Mhm.
again, doing things for the right reason. And the shocking, you can equate it to sports. Like, we see the people that make the team, we see the Patrick Mahomes, we see the LeBron James, we see the elite, we see the best, and most of us are not even in the ballpark of being that 11th or whatever number it is guy on the basketball bench, or the 52nd guy on the practice squad of the NFL. Even people that were amazing in college or amazing in high school, they never even get that far. So with actors and everything, we tend to see the elites. And it's to me, and I always try, because I'm one of them, try to look behind the scenes, look at the coaches, look at the assistant coaches, look at the guy selling peanuts in the baseball stadium, but look at the tens of thousands of people that had that dream to make it, and they just couldn't for one reason or another. Again, that's not a failure on their part. Maybe they just weren't as gifted, they weren't in the right place at the right time. Sports is a little different analogy, because in general, talent wins out. If you're good, you're probably going to go somewhere, but you have to be better than another 4 billion people on the planet to get very coveted spots. And sometimes it's just sheer luck. I think the old saying, though, and it's like old work advice, is that, showing up is 90% of the battle. Like going to work, doing this. You don't necessarily have to be the absolute best at your job, but if you show up every day, put effort, and like you said, to rise to the elite level, I don't think you need to be completely obsessive, but some people are.
Oh yeah.
And some people really are, and some people are just driven, and some people have the talent to go along with that. And it almost seems preordained. I was reading something recently, friends of Jack Black, huge Jack Black fan. What an insanely talented human being. But it was a wide ranging article, but they were talking about even when they were coming up together in the industry and all the things they were doing, like everyone in the friend group went, "Oh, he's going to make it." You could just tell, because the talent was so insanely overflowing in the guy. And obviously it's a gift. I mean, that guy's entertained all of us, made us laugh and laugh and cry, and the music and the acting and everything. It's just like, what a generational talent. But if you're not that, it's okay. Not everybody's going to be that. There's plenty of support people that make the whole machine work. And that, again, actors, writers, behind the scenes, assistant coaches, whatever, the guy that cleans up the stadium after the sports event, we're all people, and we're all contributing to that, to that win. So I just rambling. I don't know if there was a question there, if I even answered it.
No. I think it's interesting, because this comes up a lot. Recently, there's been a blow up with this YA author who's talking. She's basically disavowed the film that is made based on her YA series, and I can't remember I've never read it, but ultimately, one of the things that I've observed and I've thought about is how film is a collaborative medium.
100%.
Yes. And you, as a writer who works with a film, has to accept the collaborative element of the film. I mean, it's ultimately, the nature of a screenplay does not lend itself infinitely to every visual. That's the director's job and the cinematographer's job. It doesn't, in certain ways, it can lend itself to the delivery, but when it comes right down to it, that's the actor's job. And fundamentally, because of this, all film is a collective experience. It's not about one person. It's not about the screenplay fundamentally. You now have had multiple screenplays that you've written, produced. How does it feel to see that represented on the screen?
It's, it's a giant kick. It's great. It's awesome. It's a dopamine rush that's kind of hard to replicate. And also and that either that's the skill of the writer or the skill of the actor and director and others interpreting what you've written. But when the line comes out, the character's portrayed exactly like you imagined it in your head, when that all comes together in that perfect storm of chemistry, that when everybody's clicking on all the cylinders, that's the biggest thrill ever. And then the opposite of that, when somebody reads a line that like, oh, that's not the way the line was supposed to be. But then you got to set your own ego aside and go, you know what, that was actually better. Which I did want to say something before I keep talking, babbling as it were, about that.
Yeah.
Is there's a saying, not original to me, but I've been saying it quite a bit, is that a screenplay is a blueprint, like you smartly said, which a whole bunch of people are going to build a house from or build a mansion or whatever they're building from. You put the blueprint down and you can make a really detailed blueprint, but sooner or later you're handing that over to dozens or hundreds of other people to interpret, and hopefully you get to stay along and make some notes and make corrections when the building doesn't go up isn't exactly to code and you got to change things. But a novel or a short story or any other form is the end result. It's all you. You're playing all those parts.
Yeah.
You don't have the luxury to hand it off to somebody else. Like there's a section in one of my latest screenplays that hasn't really gone out yet, but I got to a point where I just knew that this transition between two things just didn't work, and I labored and labored and labored on it, and I basically just went, the director will figure it out. Now, you don't want to do that. That's not the right answer to that. But then that's where sooner or later there will be that collaboration that they'll go, oh, we'll do this visually, or it'll be changed so much by the time you actually get to that transition that, those two scenes might not even butt up against each other. And there's a natural thing in the middle that I wasn't seeing. But in a novel, it's all you. Now, you should have an editor. Every writer should have an editor, and writers who think they don't need editors, either simply for typos and grammar corrections, because none of us are perfect in that, or story editors. There's various levels of editors, and any writer who thinks they don't need an editor is wrong. So, and that's not just me saying that. That's many, many, many professional writers, best-selling writers, everything. And you see a lot of times they give enormous credit to their editors that they can help them either shape the story if they don't need that, but help them make sure that the final words. And everybody gets to a point where I'm pretty damn good at this, and I don't need anybody to tell me what to do. Most of the time, you're probably right. And then there's that point where we've all seen it go completely wrong. A lot of times in like sophomore films, the second film, some great director or writer or whatever comes out, makes this amazing first movie, and then they get free reign on the second movie, and it kind of goes in the toilet.
Huge mistake.
And again, that's not always because they were believing their own bullshit, but a lot of times it is because they were believing. So it's also hard as a writer. Like you also brought up the collaborative nature. It took me a while to get this. Is rewrites are hell. Rewrites are terrible. And for a while, people were saying Eric doesn't like rewrites. No, I don't mind rewrites at all, because I have never written anything perfect in my life that doesn't need to be changed or interpreted in a different way. But it's still, you created a baby, it's yours, and then you have these outside forces going, well, hey, I think we should do it this way. And pretty much the way it works is you have to do what they say. And so the game is to, which took me a while to learn, but this is a lesson for anybody who wants to be in screenwriting, is how to do rewrites with grace. You don't have to do every change that they demand, but you at least try. And sometimes it's better. Put your ego aside. Maybe that scene wasn't actually working. Maybe that character was kind of dull. Maybe your arcs weren't right. Go look yourself in the mirror, get out of your own way, and realize, and even if they're wrong, they're still paying the check, or their name's gonna be on it. So and unfortunately that leads to this is another fun thing. It's very broad generalization. If the movie's great, the director and the actors did it. If the movie sucks, it was the writer's fault. But the best people either write their own stuff and direct it, or credit the writers. And again, it's very collaborative. TV, much more, the writers have much more power in television. They're generally the showrunners and the producers, and they get much more power. Features, it's again, on the totem pole, it's actors.
It's the auteur.
It's the auteur theory, and that's true. But there are very few people, in my opinion, that have earned the auteur thing. It was bigger, more prevalent in the 60s and 70s, and a lot of that came out. I believe it came out of the French filmmaking and other places that there's really one person behind the camera, but you can pretty much count on, I don't know, 2 hands or 10 toes how many directors, how many producers. Sometimes it's a producer or even a writer out there that really is the author of that movie. And some you can tell. Like, how many times when you're watching a movie can you actually tell who's directing?
Yeah.
I could not even know it, but you did a blind taste test with Pepsi, Coke, Two Buck Chuck, and whatever movie, and put it up there. I could tell you what movie Sam Raimi directed, because there's a very active. There's a visual style. There's a story style.
There's an actor.
Style. Yeah, it doesn't matter who the actor is or what the story is. It's like, yep, that's a Sam Raimi movie. And John Carpenter, the same way. But again, those are David Lynch. You get into people like that are just like, oh yeah, that's like, and it's kind of like I think years ago I heard a song on the radio and didn't just heard the entry of it, and I went, oh shit, there's a new Queen song, because I could tell that was Brian May on guitar, and it was a Queen arrangement. And I didn't have to have the DJ tell me who it was. So,
Yeah.
but then the other, if you do that with radio, with movies, with everything, can you really tell who's behind the camera? Not most of the time. Not most of the time. So those are the true auteurs. And when you get a chance, if you do get a chance to work with people like that, that's great. But that's, again, back to the thing. It's much easier with people like that. And I haven't had the chance to actually write for anyone of that Titanic of a level yet, but fingers crossed. But I think it's got to be a hell of a lot easier to put your ego aside as a writer. If I was ever so lucky and Sam Raimi told me to blow my script up and turn it upside down and redo everything, I'd be like, okay, yes, sir. Because I'm in the room with somebody smarter than me that knows filmmaking at a level level better than I'll ever know. So again, that's just putting your ego aside. Same thing when you're writing a novel or a short story or whatever you're doing, or a letter to your mom. If your editor says, "Hey, this is a problem," which brings me up to another pro tip for writing, is everybody has to have beta readers, no matter what you're writing. If it's screenplay, novel, short story, we've all got our friends. You bug your brother, your sister, your best friend, and they're rolling their eyes until you're big and famous, of course, and then they can say, "I helped you be who he was." But in the beginning, have people read it. It doesn't have to be, and you don't have to encourage them. Don't blow smoke up my butt. Tell me, is it good or bad, or what do you like? What don't you like? You're trying to get creative feedback, and you don't have to be cruel if you don't like something, but at least give that person the feedback. And the saying is, though, if one or two people have a problem here, there, and wherever, that's okay. They just didn't like this, whatever. But if two or three people have a problem at the same point, you have a problem, and you need to look at heavily rewriting it. Because if people are honing in on the same thing and their eye goes to it and says, "Yeah, this on page 6 doesn't work," I think by the time you get to the third person saying, "Yeah, that scene really doesn't work for me," you pretty much ought to be able to put that ego aside and figure out how to rework it.
Well, that's interesting. Let's talk about Whatever Happened to Uncle Ed, which when I started reading it, third person present tense, I immediately thought screenplay. Am I right?
Well, so yes and no. As if I'm sure most people know this by now, but if you don't, screenplays are written in present tense.
Yes.
Most prose is written in past tense.
Past tense. Yes.
But what I did, it was partially because of my screenplay training, but I started writing prose, short stories and things long before I wrote the novel. As you noticed, as you go along, my chapters are now and then. I go back and forth in time. I start in the present. I flash back to various characters and how they got here and how their life. And I do this big slow burn, slow build of really, I love in everything I like watching. I like getting to know the character, because that's kind of a way to build suspense and build things. When you love the character, you're invested in the character and you want to know more about the character. When things happen, it's magnified. When a scary thing happens or a good thing happens, or you fall in love or the zombies rip your head off, you care a hell of a lot more because the writer, whoever took the time to get to know that character. So I was doing that in the novel, but I did it intensely. And a lot of people have never even noticed that, which I kind of laugh about. And I think I did my job pretty well on that, is that the present tense is in the present tense. And the past stories, the then is in the past tense. And I just did it as a trick, not really as a trick, but it just felt natural to me. And yes, I did have much more training writing in the present tense because of my screenplay background. So I kind of write naturally. And I've been through it a million times, and I keep thinking that I've missed a word here and there that I'll have a present tense. And like, oh, did I mess that up? But I think it's pretty clean. So I think my editors helped me with that and pointed out a few of those. And you're like, dope. But I'm glad you picked up on that. But it's not meant to be a trick. It's just meant to be a device, which we do. So, and also it's a thing that's my first novel, and it's probably the thing I would advise first time novelists or first time anybody. Don't try advanced level, trickery on your first time out. Just try to get the basics. In this case, basketball is a theme of the book, and it's just like, don't try to chuck 3-pointers. Just learn how to dribble first before you actually, go out and join the NBA. But because of all the writing, the decades of screenwriting and also of prose writing, I think I was a little bit more advanced for my first novel. So even though there's some clunky sections in there, and I dangled a participle or two, and I don't know, some other bad grammar things, but thanks to the great Stephen King, I did eliminate as many adverbs as possible, because I finally took somebody else's writing advice and said, yeah, adverbs are evil. So thank you, Mr. King, for that. And it honestly, up until this novel, I was an adverb lover, and now I'm like, I get what he was saying about it.
The irony being, of course, that the great lover of adverbs is J.K. Rowling, who is the other most successful and richest author on the face of the earth.
Yeah, there are so many writing rules, and in general, I mean, I've been a rule breaker since the beginning. Since I was a kid, just some of us just don't want to follow the rules. Sometimes you really should follow the rules, like screenplays. Again, pro tip: anybody who wants to be a screenwriter, screenplays look a certain way. You can
Yes.
get the templates. Final Draft will format it for you. There's templates for Word and various other programs that will write it. Don't write a screenplay wildly outside of the format that screenplays are supposed to look like, because you won't get read. No one will
Yeah.
read it. They'll think, who is this yokel? And that's, at least I never broke that rule. Make your screenplay look like a screenplay. Now within that, there's little variations. There's minor things that you can do to kind of change the look a little bit here and there. But in general, that looks the same way. And the same thing with a novel. It's novels and screenplays. There's paragraphs, there's sentences, there's words. Don't, with rare exception, one of the greatest exceptions to that ever is in House of Leaves. I don't know if you've ever read that or not. And
I have it upstairs. I haven't read it.
I mean, you can spend a lifetime reading that book and rereading it. And there's a certain point, spoiler alert, when one of the story threads and one of the characters is descending into madness of both himself and the terrain around him. The book's a huge influence on me and on whatever happened to Uncle Ed also. There's just that writing style from Mark Danielewski that is just incredible. But at some point where the text starts going insane, like he's on a spiral staircase and the text goes around in circles on the page. And that's great. That's next level writing. You, beginning writer, should not do that. It's probably not the best idea in the world. So, but hey, you know what? Try anything. Be creative. Have fun. Just make it work. But again, lost the thread again. I don't remember what the question was, but
well, let's talk about your novel, and let's talk about whatever happened.
That's what we were talking about.
Yes, mostly. Well, ultimately, I can ask you, and would love to ask you questions about screenwriting all day, but you are pitching a novel. You are trying to sell a novel. So, whatever happened to Uncle Ed? Story of three gents who are traveling. Well, they're in a mansion. There's a underlying threat from their past and their present that they are seeking to destroy,
Very well put.
while contending with their past, both their decisions and the monsters, the things that the monsters have taken from them. Tell the dad literati more about whatever happened to Uncle Ed.
That's a very good summation. It does mostly, there are three guys in the beginning, but it does, and other people come in and out later on, but it mainly focuses on the hero, Max, who is a former, I won't say failed, but a former high school basketball star back in the day, who was on the cusp of great things, of, going to the state finals, college scouts everywhere. His life is about to change from a very shy boy with a somewhat abusive family life. Things are finally hitting, and then events take place, which you see in a lot of the flashbacks and all the things as the story unfolds, as the onion unpeels. You find out how he got to the present day where we start, where he's just kind of a boring, weird accountant working in an accounting firm, and he's in his 40s somewhere. He lives in the weird mansion, and people are trying to, hey, you want to play some hoops this weekend? And he has the distant memory of when he was the king, when he was the best, and it's just like, no, I lost my shot. You find out there's way more reasons why he still doesn't want to play basketball. But again, there's a layer of onion unpeeling in this character and the strange people that are with him in this house. And it's tough to describe the book because I don't want to give away too many spoilers.
Yes.
But from the title, the reason why he is where he's at is that his mysterious, as I like to call him, but let's just be I'll just be succinct here. I think we've all figured out that Uncle Ed is the villain of the piece, but he's disappeared years ago. And as you slowly find out that he's intrinsic to all of these things that happened to Max in his life and put him where he's at and put him with these weird people and the strange things that happen in the basement on every full moon, all of this is going on. And basically Max has devoted his life to ending a family curse brought upon by his mysterious Uncle Ed. And of course, it's all trying to answer the question of whatever did happen to Uncle Ed. He's been gone for years, and part of the curse is that he left the house and a magic book and a weird things in the basement to Max, and he's got to assimilate and figure out what to do with all these strange evil things that he's been gifted and how to end the family curse. So a lot of it is I don't go super deep into metaphors, but a lot of it is metaphors that we all have our curses, and I skirt around bullying. I bring up a lot of things. There's absolute bullying. There's spousal abuse, not on camera, as it were, in the page, but
Yes.
alluded to and figured out. And all of these people, as you mentioned, the people that are with him and other people they encounter are dealing with various levels of psychological trauma, some literal PTSD from combat and other things, others that just having these terrible life choices and things that have happened. And they all have to join together to fight the physical manifestations of their terrors, which become, again, don't want to spoil too much, but through the magical curse that's going on in this house that they live in and down in the basement, these things become real and they have to fight them. And so it's again, you can go deep into metaphors if you want, but and there's definitely metaphors there, but a lot of times it's just like literal. I'm literally punching my demons in the face. They're not metaphorical demons. I think Max even has that saying at one point. One of his lines is I'm pretty sure that I'm not gonna die through some abstract threat. I think it's going to be a monster eating my face off is what's going to kill me. So yeah, it's full of action, it's full of magic, it's full of mystery and wonder. There's a love story, and at the end of the day, it's about a boy who lost his mother, and he's still trying to make his mom proud and overcome the generational threat and all these things and do right. Just trying to be that one guy standing up and doing the right thing no matter what the cost to him. And there is obsession in there. I'm fascinated by, we were talking earlier about actors and people coming to Hollywood or becoming writers or whatever, being obsessed. I've always been fascinated by race car drivers and sports stars, that the obsession to win. And we've all heard the stories, the Michael Jordan blows his ankle out and to tape it up and shoot me up and go back and win the finals. That craziness of what people will do to win. Race car drivers strap themselves in, and yes, there's safety devices, and yes, there's this, but they're still doing 240 miles an hour, and they can flip off the road and go into a tree. But they do it. They just do it, and they'll do it again even after the crash. I think I watch a lot of racing, and MotoGP, which is the highest form of motorcycle racing. I believe it was, sorry if I get this wrong, but Mark Marquez, or one of the great riders of all time, had a terrible crack up, and broke many, many bones. And it took him a few years, but he's back on the bike. And any sane human being, as we see the sane, like, shouldn't you take a few years off or just quit, and like, nope, he's back there on the bike doing 180 and laying it down and flipping. And you're just like, again, hats off to that. Those people aren't normal, and thank goodness for that whole human thing that they're not. But also you have to have empathy for them too, as that's something I delve into in the novel as other characters. When Max has gone off the deep end with his obsession to try and fix these rights and wrongs, and he's basically falling apart mentally and physically, is that at a certain point somebody's just got to say, hey, stop, hold on. And whether some of us are doing that in life too, we all can get a little bit obsessive about some things, and hopefully we've got the friend or loved one or just even a stranger to go, hey dude, whoa, cool your jets there. Maybe you should think about, you just had your 5th concussion in a row, and maybe you should not go back in and play another down. Maybe you should, take a day off and take 2 aspirin and call me in the morning. So, but there's that subset.
Well, now we know. Yeah.
There's that subset. There's also, I always like to say too, there's a thing where the old saying that doing the same thing over and over and expecting the different result is the sign of insanity. But also it's just like, well, never give up, never quit trying. I had to, Heinz 57, it was the 57th try to make the perfect ketchup or whatever variation of it is. And it's just like, don't you quit at about it? Shouldn't you just, like, after you've been beating your head against the wall for how many years, at a certain point, do you just go, hey, this is stupid, should I quit? And the answer is no. Some people don't quit.
Yeah.
And again, not an ad for Heinz ketchup or anything, but it is the best ketchup. Or wait, is that the 57 steak sauce? I can't remember. Whatever bad
No,
analogy.
you're
Yeah.
thinking about A1.
Oh, well, no,
A1 is the
A1 would have been
steak
the
sauce.
no, A1 would have been the first try, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, Heinz
But
57. It's the 57 ingredients.
it's there you go.
Yes, yes.
But again, bad analogy, but or maybe a great analogy. But yeah, what do
Mhm.
we all do? Do we just keep trying? And that applies to all sections of life. And at a certain point, sometimes you just got to take a step back from yourself. Or again, like I said, hopefully somebody else will stop you and go, "Hey, dude, maybe you change your approach." Maybe change your writing style, change the genre you're writing in, or just like, again, you've had your sixth concussion this week. I think maybe you should go be a coach now. You can still be in football or basketball or whatever, but I think the time of you getting your brain splattered out. But again, back to the race car drivers, they have the worst crack up in the world, and they jump right back in as soon as they're healed. The great, he's passed on now, but the great Nicky Lauda, that whole story, which was told very well in the movie Rush about Formula One back in the day, and just had one of the most horrific wrecks ever, and everyone should watch that movie. It's a terrific movie, or just read the history of it, even if you're not into racing. It's a human moment. But he's on fire, literally burns his lungs, burns his face, burns everything, and is in intensive care. And I forget how many weeks later, the guy's back out in the race car. Like, again, should you be doing this? And in his case, he was actually very calculated about it. He was one of the smarter and very calculated people that did it. But it's a long, complicated story, and I won't spoil it. But it really happened. It's a real person, and he went on to a very long life and stayed in the sport after he did eventually quit driving. But again, back to that obsession, and that's something I really focus on in the novel, is especially through the main character, but also the other ones, about everyone that just won't quit. And that's to be celebrated, but it's also to be, if you're the friend, put the hand on the shoulder and go, hang on, bro. I think, again, you've had
Yes.
you had 42 Jaeger bombs tonight. I think 42 is enough. Let's pack it in and go home.
So the opposite of Cool Hand Luke with the boiled
With the
eggs.
eggs. Yeah. Exactly. Well, and then I guess you could say, dad joke, he was egging him on.
He was hanging on.
So yeah, that's one of the many things I touch on. And the novel's not just about basketball. Again, it's about a boy and his mother. It's about fighting demons, about ending a generational curse. And again, it's love story, mystery. There's a whole lot of stuff going on in there. And at one point, I think one of the reviewers said, all of these wild, disparate elements somehow, that I managed to make them all thread together and make them make sense and come into a cohesive narrative. And was very proud of that they noticed. I think you were figuring that out too as you're reading it. And then somebody else said too, I think probably the comment that the review that I'm most proud of, is they said that I managed to make your worst nightmares both horrifying and hilarious. Because I got a sense of humor. I love horror comedies, and I also like just basically situational humor, like people in a foxhole, cops, firemen, nurses, doctors, and anyone in a high stress situation. Is basically, you have to have a sense of humor about things, and it's not disrespectful, it's not ghoulish, it's a tension relief. And we get that. That's why I think some of the greatest horror movies of all time, even if they're not a flat out horror comedy, there's still a comedy beat in there that lets you catch your breath, lets your heart slow down, lets you realize that, okay, I'm safe for a couple minutes, and the nervous laughter or whatever. And again, I put humor in everything I do. So there's a lot of really dark, really bleak humor in the novel too. And I'm proud of that. People picked up on it. It's a lot of scares and a lot of action, which isn't in a lot of horror novels, but there's definitely a lot of action scenes. But it's still a great sense of humor too that people really pick up on.
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up, because that's what my most recent project is all about: physical manifestations of fear. And one of the physical manifestations of fear is laughter. Fundamentally, when you laugh, you're experiencing discomfort, and your body is alleviated from that discomfort and that fear, and you laugh.
Yeah, that's a
It is actually a fear response.
voluntary.
Yes.
I read something years ago, and I don't know the validity of it, but it rang true at the time. That it was I think some whatever university study of humor and horror and things, and they said that basically most comedy comes out of pain, might tie
Yes.
into kind of what you're talking about in that. I mean, obviously the Three Stooges, some people don't think it's funny. I do. Obviously Sam Raimi thought it was funny because then we have the glorious Evil Dead stuff. But,
Yes.
basically that's people getting hurt, but you're laughing at people getting hurt because it's a safety valve. It's like, you're really not going to splatter Shemp's brains across the room when he gets hit with an anvil or whatever it is. So
Yeah.
it's a safe version of that. So, and there's a million examples of that, but like you say, it's a response. And as we're watching something, we're watching a horror movie or we're in a horrifying situation, either in life or you're just in a weird place at night or something, the old saying, the hair's standing up. We're still creatures. We're still cavemen around the campfire. And I like to say there's a digital campfire now, which extends, globally, worldwide, and we can see and learn almost anything. But you know what? The unknown is still out there. It's still
Mm.
lurking in various forms. It can be outside your bedroom door. It can be on the other side of a message from a stranger. It can be when you're walking to the grocery store and walking to your car, which sadly happens too often. And we're still those cavemen huddled around that campfire, no matter what shape the campfire takes. And
Mm.
and and again, after whatever, pick your caveman name, after he escapes the saber-toothed tiger and he's with his buddies around the fire, it's like, yo, dude, you almost lost your ass that time. You got to have the laugh about it.
Yes. Well, it's with the internet, I think it's even more interesting to talk about the terror of the known.
And that's
That getting to know uh, your
it.
fellow person unencumbered by social niceties and their ability to read your face is in and of itself astonishingly terrifying.
Yeah, that's well, the old trope is, and I believe it, that the true terror is the unknown. I even mentioned
Hmm.
that one of my favorite sections in the novel is I mentioned that this terrible, horrifying thing happens, and he thinks, "Wow, it can't get any worse than that," and then something else happens, and I go into a soliloquy about it. After all of this, it's the unknown. Even though that was
Hmm.
in your face and graphic and everything, just simply standing here in the darkness and not knowing what might come up behind you, that's the scariest thing of all. But like you say, it's actually kind of being flipped on its head. It's either a corollary of that or the opposite, or it's the same damn thing. It's the fear of the known.
Yes.
That's a good tagline. You should copyright that. But
Yes, well, it figures into my interpretation of the internet, which is that the best thing about the internet is that it gives marginalized people a voice, and the worst thing about the internet is that it gives marginalized people a voice.
a voice. It's the good old double-edged sword
The
there.
good
Yeah.
old double-edged sword.
Yeah. So
But to that extent, um, it's it's very interesting. What would you say? I mean, we're coming to the end. You have the experience of screenwriting before you sat down to write your first novel. And what would you say you learned in screenwriting that would be valuable to any novelist, or that was particularly valuable to you as a novelist?
that's a very good question. Many lessons that go back and forth. But I think the thing you learn in screenwriting is the setting a scene, blocking, as we would call it. You get in, you
Yeah.
get your location, even when you're writing it, but when you're physically there, you bring the actors in, you rehearse it, the camera's here, they're there, and you work through this thing about before we ever see the end result, they walk over here, picks this up, he does that, the camera stays here. And of course, you do a million takes from a million different angles. But when you're doing that master shot to set the scene, most of the time the filmmakers don't actually see, or I'm sorry, the fans and the viewers don't actually see the master shot, but it's a visual reference for all of the punching in and close-ups and everything that you film after that. So when you're writing in a screenplay, you're setting those scenes, setting them in place. And I think that was really powerful to me to be able to in the screenplay, because you're like putting people in a certain place because you're imagining you're not the director of photography. And another pro tip, do not put camera moves or anything like this in your screenplay, because that's somebody else's job, unless it's a very specific, very important thing that you need to have this wide shot or something to establish something. You can do that. But in general, don't tell people what to do, how to do their job, but you still visually have to do that in a screenplay. So you set the scene and you're moving the characters around. So when I went back to, I learned so much of that. So when I went back to prose, when I flipped back to the other side, is you re-examine the same scene, and there's levels of detail in all type of writing. Some writers write excruciating detail down to picking up the pen and exactly how the hand moves and the style of writing. Other people just say, he wrote a letter. So somewhere in between that is everybody's personal style. And that goes into that same setting. The scene is that you're basically physically moving people around the rooms and making them do things to your level of detail that your style dictates. And that screenwriting really helped me with that. And the other thing that helped too is screenplays, feature screenplays in general, are on a pretty tight schedule, which makes them hard to write. Generally, we talk about the 3-act structure. It's first, second, third act, even though the second act is the biggest. There's sub acts and there's beats and highs and lows and all kinds of things. TV has a whole different act structure, depending on whether you're network or streaming or whatever. But there's all different types of that. But in general, 3-act structure, beginning, middle, of end. And so you even in a short story, you have to follow that. So that's a good tool for people to remember. And some people have great openings, have terrible endings. Some people have terrible openings and terrible endings. And when you get the people that have it all the way across, it's great all the way. That's the gold in a novel, in a screenplay, in a movie, whatever, that you can just keep watching it and the thrills keep paying off and it gives you the breathers and everything. So again, that learning that structure, but applying that to a novel, you do have the chance in a novel to go much deeper into other characters. You can make more. It's like a video game. You can make a lot more side quests. You can examine other characters. You can spend time with side characters, but you're still staying on that through line that's taking you to the third act and the end of the movie. Sometimes the end of the movie, sometimes it's a teaser or a stinger for the sequel, but that's a whole other story. But
yes, I've recently tackled that.
yes, the denouement and or the teaser for the sequel that you hope actually gets made. But concentrate on the first one first. Don't be thinking about the second one. So that's the other lesson, is it teaches you that yes, take diversions, follow more, expand it more. And I do love that about the novel space, is that you can go a lot bigger, a lot different. You can put more voice in, and you can put more inner thoughts in that you can't do in a screenplay generally, but you still have to stay on that line. You don't, I'll equate this to one of the greatest writers of all time, and I won't name him, but somebody might figure out what I'm talking about. But you've written 2 or 3 epic novels in your fantasy series, and you're following all these hundreds of different characters and different stories, and still there's a through line of what's going on. And then suddenly, I can't remember if it's the 3rd or 4th book comes out, and it's a whole new set of characters that you've never heard of and situations you're not, and you're kind of like, screech, wait, what? Hang on. You had me. I was reading one of the greatest series of all time. Now, of course, some of those characters go on to be part of the greater mythic whole, and it turns out to be great if it's ever finished. But in general, try to stay focused, have fun, take your side things, feed people more, give people more candy in the novel space, because you can simply, within limits, you have a lot more words and a lot more pages than you do in a screenplay. And again, screenplays get shorter and shorter as our attention spans get shorter. I think, it used to be the rule is between 90 and 120 pages. And the rough rule is that it's a minute a page or something like that, with, there's obviously variations in that. But nowadays, Hollywood, it's like if you're getting over 100 pages or over 90, you're getting long. People don't want to read that much. And that's because we're in the world where people have 2-second attention spans and, shorts. Like people don't even want to make a YouTube video that's over 20 minutes anymore, because the attention spans are gone. Now, broad generalizations, people do still want to watch it. The Odyssey, what is that, close to 3 hours, I think. Obviously, that's fine. And if you've got the material and you're doing it, but again, that's Christopher Nolan. That's not me and you and the average person. I think he earned the right to make the 3-hour epic, and from the giant Odyssey is what I'm talking about, of course, depending on when you're seeing this. But most of us have to keep it very concise, very concise. And again, you do have a little bit more room to roam in a novel. And hopefully your novel rights will be picked up by some brilliant filmmaker, and then they'll cut all that side crap out and they'll just follow that one through line that you had. And you don't care because you cashed the check. What you said earlier, somebody, getting mad about their interpretation of it. And yeah, which I think I would be in the same piece, but also it's just the great James Ellroy, one of the greatest writers ever, amazing guy. Somebody asked him one time about what he thought about what Hollywood did to his books. And he said, paraphrasing, something to the extent of, I was like, I don't care. It's just how many zeros there are on the check. They can do whatever they want. So I'm sure he cares, but at the end of the day, it's like, pay me to go away and have a nice day. And so there you go.
Well, thank you, Eric, for coming on the pod. Everyone should go out and check out Whatever Happened to Uncle Ed by Eric Miller.
Everyone,
Everyone.
All 8 billion of you on the planet.
All
Everybody.
the 8 billion. Also, if you want, you should go watch Ice Spiders, Mask Makers, The Shadow Men, and Swamp Shark with Christy Swanson.
Terrific cast in that movie. I like talking about that. I know we got to wrap this up, but Christy and
well,
everybody.
Eric, will you come back and chat about Hollywood and films?
I'd love to have you back. We'll do a part 2. Yes.
Yes. I think what we should do is we should have you back Halloween, and we should talk about horror and what makes horror great. And I think that would be terrific.
That would be fun. I'd love to come back.
Yes. Thank you so much for coming on the Dad Lit Pod. This has been Dan Roberts, your Dad Lit host, joined by Eric Miller. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate being here.
Our time together has come to an end. It's time to return to your wife, kids, and friends. It's time to pick up those books you forgot while you wait for the next Dad Lit Pod.